welcome to Techtonic Talks. Today we're joined by Dr. Tomislav Karačić. Welcome, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Since 2024, you have held an assistant professor position in information systems at the London School of Economics. Your research focuses on the way in which artificial intelligence is developed, interpreted, and governed in religious contexts. And you gave a talk recently on how the Catholic Church is implementing language learning models and AI.
So Dr. Karačić actually spoke to one of our reporters, Emma Gatrell, on a story about AI and religion. She also spoke with priests who have used AI to write their sermons as well. So if you would like to read more in depth about how AI is being used in a religious context, go to our website at www.thetechtonicmagazine.com. So Dr. Karačić, as well as finding your own faith through the chatbots as well. How, I guess some of our listeners might be wondering, why a chatbot, and when exactly in that process did you actually start going to the church?
6 years ago, I kind of started on this path, right? So obviously, it was, I didn't go for a mass or a confession or anything like that, but I was, intensely thinking about faith, meaning of life, and I had this internal kind of a calling or a feeling that was drawing me to the faith. But then you realize, well, I don't really know much about this, and theology can be quite a complex topic.
Very much so.
Absolutely. And so you kind of hear some of the things, and so I think I started just from the basics. So let's read what's in the Bible. Yes.
Which brings me on to a question, actually. So what does the Bible say about technology?
Technology was always there. So if you go to the book of Genesis, so it depends on the meaning of technology, right? I mean, clothes are a kind of a technology, right? So in one of the first passages, when Adam and Eve are sort of banished from the Garden of Eden, one of the first things they do is they put clothes on themselves. And then the relationship, I suppose, with technology was quite complicated, throughout the history, because always, there's military technology, which is very much present. Technology is not, I suppose, predeterminedly good or bad, but it's really, what do we use it for? How do we use it? How is it sort of shaping the relationships we have with other people as well? Because the technology can definitely bring people together, but it can also isolate them. And I think this is precisely in the heart of many of the kind of thinking of the Catholic Church about technology. So is it actually bringing more communion, more communication? Is it bringing people together? Or is it just making us isolated and not communicating with one another? But today, for example, you have an AI boyfriend or a girlfriend, right? That's obviously a bad thing, right? Because you don't have this genuine social relationship. It's parasocial, as they say. But it can also bring people together. I mean, it allows me to understand other cultures, to speak other languages, to visit new places, to understand other people in ways that would be impossible for me to do before.
On the 15th of May, Pope Leo published a papal letter on technology, and he said that it is not, quote, a force antagonistic to humanity, nor is it, quote, inherently evil. However, technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it. That's another quote from the Pope. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with the Pope on this matter completely. There's also, I think, my favorite quote from the Pope, and I'll speak more about the letter as well. So in November, he wrote a letter to a group of Catholic AI developers, where he said, every design choice expresses a vision of humanity. And I think this is really a powerful quote when you think about it, because it really puts a lot of moral weight to every single design choice that we make. If you design a chatbot to be, in a way, addicted, to sort of is a sycophant, and it's kind of pushing you to converse more and more, to go down this rabbit hole and spiral, which can lead people to have all sorts of psychosis, etc. Well, I mean, it's a very deliberate design choice to keep you in the same way how you doom scroll on social media. You also are kind of in looped in this chatbots, and it's very hard to get out because it gets addicted in the same way how algorithms, social media gets addicted.
Because it's a profitable system?
Yes, absolutely. And how can a chatbot know to help you articulate what your problems are? Because you reach out to a chatbot because you have mental health issues or faith questions or problems in family. You don't have anybody to talk to, right? So it helps you articulate it, helps you think about it in a deeper level. You actually have somebody to converse with. But then at one point, it should say, well, I think now is the time to actually talk with your spouse that you're having problems with.
But will it say that? Or will it keep you in a cycle of, monetization? It's feeding on your data, is it not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the predominant chatbots that are out there will just keep you in the loop. Absolutely. But this tool that I was studying within the context of the Catholic Church called Magisterium AI is designed specifically so that it helps you connect with actual people. So as these developers say, a good chatbot should be the one that you stop using because your need was satisfied and you went to church, you found your parish.
And so when you were speaking with a chatbot about finding your faith, were you speaking with that specific software or that specific chatbot, or was it with a more predominant chatbot?
So it started with ChatGPT and
Yeah.
later I kind of got to Magisterium AI, and because I just didn't know about Magisterium AI at first.
Okay.
So it was with ChatGPT, but I think it was it really depends also how you use it, because I wasn't just asking it very vague random questions, which also comes sort of from my training in information systems in the first place.
Right, absolutely.
So I was, I would upload the actual documents that I'm interested in, for example, the Bible, and then I would ask very specific questions that I knew it can actually answer.
Dr. Karačić, can AI and chatbots, why is your area of research focused on Christianity? Can we see these chatbots being used to allow people to find their faith in terms of Judaism, Islam? Do we see this happening elsewhere in the world?
Absolutely everywhere. And of course, I started with Catholicism simply because I'm a Catholic, and it was sort of easy to get access to actually talk with these developers. But I'm now definitely expanding the scope of my research. So I'm currently trying to, it all depends on funding as well. But currently I'm writing this proposal where I went to just sort of a comparative study across different faith traditions and seeing, for example, how some faith communities that are very much, let's say, against this rapid adoption of technologies. So just think of the Amish, which are kind of famously really think deeply about and intentionally how we actually want to use a particular kind of a tool. And then it was interesting that even they, because they have this communal form of deciding whether a technology should be accepted or not by their community. And they've rejected a lot of technologies, but I've read just this week that they've accepted large language models as an acceptable technology to be used in Amish communities.
The Amish community in America, this is?
Yes.
Right, I
So
see.
it's very interesting. And then the question is, and I don't know the answer, well, why did they accept this one? So it's a very interesting question.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't want to presume. Yes, so it's kind of I don't know.
Well, how would
It's an interesting question though.
how would that even work? Like, did they have the technologies to actually like have these LLMs? How does that gonna work?
Yeah, I don't know. For example, I also want to study this. You have these kind of Orthodox Jewish communities that I also want to study. So, for example, they're very similar in the sense that they really deliberate what kind of technologies should be allowed, what the implications are. So, for example, they use phones, but they use these kosher phones, as they call it. So it's phones that are specifically, some of the features are limited, right? So that kind of they limits all the potential negative consequences of the use of technology. So I presume in the Amish case there might be, so I guess they wouldn't call it kosher, but some other word. But it's the same style of really deliberating, or not taking it at face value. Whatever we get from Silicon Valley, let's just use it. But it's actually, well, what parts of this do we actually want, and what are actually the implications? They talk about either singularity or about the salvation through technology or the apocalypse. But these are all religious terms. So it's also interesting how religious language is sort of creeping into Silicon Valley itself, for example. So I also hope by sort of studying both how faith communities think about it and having explicitly acknowledging this as a religious kind of issue or religious question, how can this also inform our understanding of these new forms of religion that take AI as sort of a divine being?
It's very much a religious question, but also there are concerns from an ethical perspective. I mean, are there risks of radicalization with AI chatbots in terms of converting certain people to different religions?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely imagine this kind of a scenario. Um, so, for example, so earlier your question was, do we see these AIs across different faiths? So I've seen these AI chatbots in all of the faiths that you've mentioned, and more broadly. I can also easily imagine, although I haven't encountered them yet, but I can easily imagine these kind of extremist or radicalist forms of religious thought being manifest in all sorts of tools that are then promoted in a similar way as extremist content is promoted on social media, and I think you've already discussed this. So it's definitely a risk.
Going back to my first question, also talking about what actually pushed you to go physically into the church? What was that kind of moment of reckoning, I guess?
I'm still in the process of converting, and it's a never-ending process because you can constantly kind of go deeper into your faith or kind of come back, and then there are definitely oscillations that people experience. I think I really wanted to go to church for a while, and I wouldn't say no AI converted me. So I've already decided that I want to be converted, and then I also a bit later decided to use AI to help me in it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I know you spoke with our reporter about how it was easier to talk to a chatbot, right? And so can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what exactly were your hesitations going into the church at first?
Mhm. Well, we're going very personal now, but but I guess um a few things. Well, the primary being, you don't feel worthy
Mm,
of. So if you believe that God exists and you've spent a decade persuading people that he doesn't, right? Um, Going to church can be a scary thing. It
Were you
shouldn't.
scared at first?
Uh, I think so.
And did the chatbots alleviate that fear?
Oh yeah. So I guess not exclusively chatbot, but it was definitely a big part of it. It helped me contextualize this kind of, let's say, past life as also an important part of formation of me as a faithful later on. That it wasn't necessarily um, this big rupture, kind of going from being an atheist to being a faithful. That there's actually much more continuity there. That it was sort of my time in the desert, in the same way. This in well, I guess not only in Christianity, but also in other faiths, there's this, like, I think in Japan, there's no dojo, kind of or the way, or there's all, or across faiths, there's this idea of being in a desert where you're being formed into a person.
How does one develop technology that can actually teach you about, the Bible? Like, did the developers just put the Bible into ChatGPT and like, I mean, it's a science thing, is it not? Like,
Mhm.
so
Data modeling.
yeah, exactly. Data modeling. How do they model data after a piece of work that has kind of gone through generations and generations of alterations and also translations, like, yeah, and along with that, is this kind of a new sort of way of like evolving the Bible? Like,
We have a lot of the writing, um, kind of Catholic thought that nobody ever read, actually. So we are only now, the AI is actually helping us to rediscover a lot of these sources. So our kind of understanding of the faith will be changing as these sources are becoming apparent, searchable, etc. So what they're doing is they're creating this, it's a very expansive but still, curated, um, let's say, set of documents. And what's important in how this particular tool works is that, so it's only using these documents and formulating the answer, but also once it formulates the answer, unlike, for example, more popular tools which just give you text, Magisterium AI will actually give you references to almost every sentence that it writes, and when you click on it, it will lead you to the source document that was used in formulating it, right? So, no, did the tool talk with the priest, as you kind of phrased it? Well, depends what it means to talk to a priest. Like, it didn't talk in a human way as we would, but it does have I would say, statistical representation of what thousands of priests have said.
Is there the risk that in the future, ChatGPT and chatbots will replace the divine? That they will replace priests and people practicing religion in places of worship?
Mm. Well, I suppose depends on a religion. If it's this kind of AI religion, right? I suppose by default, in most of the world religions, no, absolutely not.
Abrahamic religions, for example?
Yeah, I don't see ever priests being, because, for example, a sacrament can only be given by an ordained priest. Sacraments are religious rituals through which you participate in the church. So, for example, one example would be baptism. So a baptism is a religious ritual through which you enter the Catholic Church and become a Catholic, for example. Or a marriage would be another sacrament. So you enter a church and a priest sort of joins the two people into a union, that's sort of confirmed by God, right? So that's a sacrament. So it's a participation in the divine in a way.
Dr. Karačić, what is the craziest thing a chatbot has ever told you?
Right. So I just explained to you what a baptism is, and ChatGPT told once that it's okay to baptize a child with an energy drink, which was pretty wild.
Okay.
And it's
Did it
definitely
specify
not.
the energy drink, or did it give advice on how to perform this ritual?
Yeah, no, so it was, and then, I mean, it was funny, and it didn't specify kind of what the energy drink was, but there was kind of, so I obviously pushed back, and well, how would it ever be, justified that you use an energy drink? And then it said, well, for example, if somebody isn't baptized but is dying, right? And now this is the only last chance to get a baptism, and there's a priest, but there's no water nearby. Then the priest could, in principle, like, what's worse, to use an energy drink or let a person die without baptism.
Needs must.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what did you prompt it to first tell you that? Did you
Oh,
ask it to?
yeah, I think I was just playing around with trying to elicit responses, and I was kind of intentionally trying to get it
Provoke it.
kind of provocative, but just to see what the limits are,
Yeah.
right? And then kind of how well would it kind of stick with it? Because when you tried Magisterium AI, for example, it would never say that you can use the energy drink, right? It would rather refuse to answer if we try to trick it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karačić, for
pleasure.
joining us and sharing a bit about your personal experience with us as well. If you want to read more of Emma Gattrell's story, you can head to www.thetectonicmagazine.com. Thank you so much for listening.